Good morning and welcome to the latest episode of Built Places Housing Conversations. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Henry Smith from the Centre for Ageing Better, and today we're going to be talking about housing and ageing population. To get us started, I'm going to run through a quick couple of slides, just kind of summarising the real estate industry's typical view of the challenges and opportunities that our ageing population present. So our first slide here is just looking at the population structure by age group across the UK, and we can see there the big increase in the number of people aged 65 to 79, and also the projected increase over the next 15 years in the dotted line there. They're expected to grow from around about 9 million people at the moment to 11.5 million in 15 years' time. And meanwhile, we haven't quite seen the same growth in the number of people aged 80, but they are increasing, and as some of those slightly younger baby boomers gradually age over the period, they're going to increase in number as well, from around about 3.5 million to 5 million. And meanwhile, you can see in the kind of the grey outlined lines there that actually, most other age groups are going to remain fairly flat over the period. So we're seeing an increasing number of older people, but also they're going to increase as a proportion of the total population. So that's clearly, a big challenge for the country, and also, the real estate industry is looking at it as a bit of an opportunity. And one of the big reasons why there's an opportunity there is the housing wealth that they own. The ONS estimate there's around about £5 trillion worth of housing equity out there. Other people might even estimate that it's somewhat higher than that. And most of the stats show that actually older people own the majority of that housing wealth. So there's a real opportunity, as many in the industry would see it, to unlock some of that housing wealth, and also alongside that maybe unlock some of the housing that they occupy. And so this chart here is looking at the under occupation of housing across England by age group and also by tenure, and you can see there that by far the largest numbers and proportions of people under occupying their home are older owner occupiers, typically owning their home outright. And so that's where you hear a lot of talk about the opportunities for downsizing and right sizing, and also for helping first-time buyers and to buy their home by unlocking that housing. And so the real estate industry views this as there's clearly a challenge, but a bit of an opportunity. Lots of wealth to make some money from, and lots of housing to unlock through downsizing. And so I'm delighted to be joined by Henry. And so Henry, just cutting over to you here, so now you should be on the video. Henry, how accurate is this representation of older people and the housing challenge that we focus?
Thanks, Neil, and thanks a lot for the invitation. I think the short answer is not very accurate, and there are three general points I wanted to respond on. The first is that many older people don't have anything like the type of housing wealth that is commonly understood. The kind of top 10% of housing wealth, so the top 10% of wealth amongst older people, and the sort of bottom 30% in terms of housing wealth, they have better options, much better options than others. So you have this kind of 60% in the middle who are trapped due to the lack of decent options available to them, who don't have the housing wealth that the top 10% have. So it's actually very thinly distributed, the housing wealth that exists across that top 10. The second point to make is that we need to move away from this obsession as a country with downsizing. And actually, our research has shown that many older people are motivated by the same sorts of desires as everyone else, other age groups, when looking at where to live. So things like access to green space, being closer to neighbours, in many cases looking for more space to be able to host guests as they retire. And so we have this obsession with number of bedrooms. But as COVID has shown really starkly, many of the extra bedrooms that older people may have serve really important functions. So they act as studies, they act as guest bedrooms for people, especially if they're living alone, which are really important. And the third and final point I wanted to make more generally is about many older people living in some of the worst quality homes in the country. So we found that there's 4.3 million homes that fail the government's decency standard, most often because of the presence of a serious hazard that impacts on the health and well-being of an occupier, such as excess cold or a trip hazard. And of those 4.3 million homes, nearly half of them are lived in by somebody over the age of 55. So what we found is particularly owner-occupiers, so people who have bought their homes perhaps through right to buy, in many cases, not having the equity now available to improve the standards of their homes. So in summary, the common misconception that we have millions of older people sitting on housing wealth and living in mansions is a misconception.
Yeah, and I'll just pop up a chart here. Henry, you won't be able to see it, but hopefully the viewers will, and they'll still be able to hear us. Just to highlight that challenge, this is just looking at the housing wealth of people aged 65 and above across England, and you can see the large bunching of people actually having housing wealth around about the average priced home. Most older people live in the average priced home, and so their housing equity is equal to the price of that home. And so the idea that they're going to actually be able to downsize into even a small new build apartment in their local area while also being able to, unlock any reasonable amount of housing wealth is, kind of unrealistic. It's really only, the top, as you mentioned, the kind of the upper end of the distribution in terms of wealth, that it's a realistic economic decision for them to make. And so I suppose, Henry, the question is, what are people actually going to do? If they're not actually going to downsize, I suppose that means that they're going to stay in their existing homes. And what do we need to do about that?
So I think the first point to make is, again, a kind of challenge to the common misconception that older people are looking to live in specialised homes, in retirement homes. That part of the market plays a really important role. And its purpose is very important, and we need more good quality retirement homes and specialist homes. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. But over 90% of older people live in mainstream housing, and want to remain living in existing communities, existing mixed communities, for as long as possible. And so we have the challenges, which are kind of twofold. Really, the first around the quality of our existing homes. Stats show that in 2050, 80% of the homes that we currently have will be the homes that we have then in 2050. So we need to improve the quality of our existing homes if we're going to be helping older people to remain living independently as long as possible. We have some of the oldest housing stock in Europe, in this country, and so many of those challenges around decency, around tackling fuel poverty and improving warmth, improving energy efficiency need to be much bigger priorities for us. So we currently don't have any comprehensive investment programs at a national level that are out there to improve private sector owner-occupied homes. We used to have over $1 billion back in the 1980s, but that's been scaled back over time, and we've actually led to for some of the older side of the population, the number of over 75s living in non-decent homes has increased over the last decade. So we drastically need more attention on existing homes. And then on the new home side of it, more than anything, we need to move to a much more positive and proactive narrative about what older people are looking for. So at the moment, only 3% of over 50s rather move every year, and that's less than half other age groups. And so rather than talking about downsizing and assuming that older people want to live in smaller homes, we need to be thinking more about right sizing. So thinking about how we can support older people to make positive choices if they choose to move, and increasing the supply of diverse homes within existing communities. So part of that is about improving accessibility of housing. so that accessibility of all homes meets a much higher mandatory baseline. And there's a consultation out from government on improving building regulations and particularly raising that mandatory baseline. So that's part of it, but also part of it is making sure that the housing that we build isn't just built for the first occupiers of home, but instead we're thinking about all of the people that are going to be living in that home across its lifespan. So thinking about homes being much more adaptable so that they can meet different needs as we get older. And so one of our bits of research has shown that the changes that people make most often to their homes is to make them brighter. So especially in the kitchen. So how can we make homes that keep people living healthily throughout their lifespan? And the fundamental around it is keeping people living independently in their homes and helping the NHS and social care. So the current cost to the NHS of poor quality housing is 1.4 billion pounds a year. So it has a huge impact, and particularly when people aren't able to be discharged back into their own homes after being in hospital.
Yeah, and actually it sounds like many of the things that we could do to make housing better for older people actually would help make housing better for everyone, which, you know, clearly there's a benefit in that as well. And yeah, you know, all the stats around the poor quality of and you mentioned specifically owner-occupied housing, and I was wondering if you have any thoughts around, the Prime Minister was talking about generation rent, and we're actually, you know, we're seeing more older people living in private rented accommodation now, and you know, historically there used to be quite a lot of them that then died away, and they're much more likely to be an owner occupation. But it seems that over the next 10, 20, maybe even 30 years, we're going to see a rise in older people living in the private rented sector. Are there any particular challenges around that we need to be considering?
Yeah, I mean, I think in many cases it's the same challenges that face all age groups in the private rented sector. So thinking about security of tenure, thinking about empowerment, tackle some of the worst quality private rented sector. So helping local authorities to use the statutory powers they have, so providing more support and resources to them. Another key point is about adaptations. So we know that even minor adaptations within people's homes as they grow older can have a big impact. At the moment, a lot of the adaptations that we have on the market look very clinical and have associations with people being in hospital. So thinking about things like grab rails. But actually, there are many designs of adaptations that can look good, as well as being really functional for other purposes as well. So really innovative things coming onto the market that show how grab rails can also function as things like toilet roll holders, or things that make them more aspirational when you're looking around a home and thinking about how you can live there throughout the course of your life. So when focusing on a private rented sector, it's about helping landlords to make those changes and overcoming this kind of vicious cycle that we currently see, where adaptations are installed and then they're ripped apart by new tenants, which is a waste of resources and money, really. So again, thinking about homes for all ages and all needs, and being much cleverer about design so that they're more efficient across their lifespan.
Yeah, and have you got any thoughts or done any research into how people kind of think about the challenges of aging? You kind of hear a lot of people who we would have considered old, so people towards the lower and even the middle of the over 65 age group who very much wouldn't view themselves as old now, and wouldn't be at all interested in possibly in some of these adaptations, or wouldn't want to yet consider them. How are the kind of how's the public's perception around that? Does that present any particular challenges?
Yeah, it does, and I think the challenge is about the oversimplification of this. So we know just how much it differs according to the area that you live in, so people aged 50 to 70 in one area may be suffering from more challenges with mobility linked to their levels of deprivation and the challenges they're facing. But as an organisation, we focus on people aged between 50 and 70, who, as you say, Neil, are not old at all these days. I mean, there's much more a midlife focus, but we think challenging people's behaviours at that point in time and challenging, how we think about housing for people at that age can help to have more impact by making positive decisions about people's housing choices. While they're still kind of more able to between those ages. So I think also just making sure that the discussions that we have at a national level think about improving people's access to information and advice so that they can make the right choices. And this is about, more than anything, creating a much better diversity of options available for people, so that we're not taking a siloed approach to housing, but rather thinking across the spectrum about increasing supply and diversity.
Not just about building bungalows.
Essentially, not just about building bungalows and lots of specialist housing, but focusing on mainstream housing is our perspective anyway.
Yeah, and helping the most people possible. Clearly, we're in strange times at the moment with the pandemic, and I was just wondering if you could talk about some of your research and what you're finding in terms of how the pandemic and the lockdown and everything else has been affecting older people.
Yeah, so I've just brought out some of our stats that we've recently collected with Ipsos Mori on this, and again focusing on that 50 to 70 age group. So more broadly outside of housing, we found that 1 in 5 people have said that their health has worsened since lockdown. So over half have had a medical or dental appointment cancelled. 32% have been drinking more. 36% have been smoking more. People have been more worried about their finances, unsurprisingly. So half of people in their 50s and 60s are expecting their finances to worsen in the year ahead. On the sort of more positive front, people have enjoyed spending more time with their loved ones. It's helped people to reappraise their kind of aspirations in their future. We've got a quarter considering a career change between the ages of 50 to 70. And then more specifically on housing, 2/5 have said that there is a problem with their home, and more than anything, that being around noises from neighbours, so impacting on their quality of life, it being too cold, being another big one, and then shortage of space featuring quite highly, and that particularly being a problem for renters, that space issue. And other issues from renters being around rising damp, condensation, and then on the social housing side of things, renovations have been delayed through lockdown. So I think in summary, it's really compounded a lot of the problems that we already knew about, and especially the disparity between people's experiences in the rented sector, and that space issue more than ever has been particularly profound, both inside and outside the space. So the importance of people's amenity space in terms of outdoor space and access to gardens and green space, which makes, I think, it even more important that when we're campaigning for changes to things like permitted development on new housing, that we think about the location in which they're built. So if people don't have access to green space in their homes or nearby, it will have a huge impact on their mental health if we're going to be having more lockdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's clearly made an already significant challenge much bigger, and could continue to do so. And so it sounds like this isn't perhaps the opportunity that many in the real estate industry would hope it would be, and it sounds like it needs some fairly substantial interventions, probably on the government side, to really have an impact. I mean, one of the go-to solutions that the industry is in favour of always is a stamp duty cut, which we clearly have at the moment. it's a little bit too early to see whether that's helped encourage any people to move in the older age groups. Those stats will probably take quite a long time to go through. Are there any other specific kind of calls you've got on government or others to kind of help house our aging population?
So I think it more than anything comes down to this point about ensuring that our new homes are built for all ages and all life stages and beyond just the first occupant, and especially on kind of the adaptability of housing, and how we need to be thinking much more innovatively about that. So ensuring that homes can be adapted, from being an office, with more people working from home, to providing space as people get older, but also thinking about how homes need to be much more visitable as well as for residents, being able to support people's social needs and about the mental and physical health needs of people living in them.
Great. Well, Henry, thank you very much. I think we've taken up enough of your time, and that's been an absolutely fascinating look at the challenges of housing our aging population. And so thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot for the invitation, Neil.